Okay, I've got a few things I want to talk about this morning. Um, First thing has to do with organizing your your files, basically knowing where important things are, so that you can get to them when you need them. And what I've found is that that simple step in your process can make a world of difference in terms of being able to stay on topic and get things done. And in my case, what I'm referring to specifically is if you work in opentoonz, you find that you create a project and then opentoonz creates a certain number of folders for you, which it basically manages. So example would be this case. Here's a project that happens to be called Blue, and opentoonz created all these folders. Now if I go into Val's Anime, all those folders are there, plus a zillion other folders that I've created. And all in all, opentoonz does a good job of managing those files behind the scenes. So the drawings folder, for example, has subfolders which opentoonz creates for every single scene that you ever create. It's not wise to go through willy-nilly and start deleting things, because you may delete something that you really wanted to keep. But in my case, what I found quite useful is I happen to have this one level I created that I've talked about in other videos. That it's just a mess in terms of a zillion sub-X sheets, and it became very unmanageable. Well, what I did was, these TLV files represent the opentoonz raster levels, so they're really the most important files. When opentoonz saves a TLV file, it also saves a TPL file. So that's going to be the palette that's associated with this toonz raster level. If the two have the same name, then it will match them up. If you change the name of the TLV file but not the TPL file, then opentoonz, it's not as if the TLV file has information inside of it to know the name of its associated TPL file. Okay, so that connection is managed one level up in the opentoonz scene, I would gather, or actually in the software, because if you just willy-nilly grab the TLV file and drag it into opentoonz, as I just did, then, and this one doesn't happen to have anything in it, but opentoonz will match them up as long as the names are the same, and that's really the only requirement. So one thing I did to speed my work up is I went into this scene file, or I should say scene folder that's associated with a scene file, and I found the two TLV files that are the most important. It was kind of easy because I could search by size, and you find out quite quickly which ones are the biggies. Okay, so then what I did was I created a separate folder here called TLV saved levels, and so this is quite cool because I've got the battle ink and paint, and I've got the fight pencil test. So now as I go forward and try to improve some of these shots, I can just load these TLV files, and I have all the action from before, and if I want to, I can just go in and delete things that are not useful for the current scene I'm working on, and then go ahead and maybe alternatively clone the cells that I want to work with so that they become effectively detached from this really, really long list, which gives you a much smaller TLV file. Hope that makes sense. In my case, I also have the fight pencil test, which I didn't even know I had actually until I started perusing these files. But quite useful actually, because if there's shots that I really feel like the ink and paint wasn't up to scratch, and believe me, there are quite a few, I suspect it's going to prove to be faster to just re-ink them than to go back to the original ink and paint job and try to fix it. Just because the process of doing erasing and re-inking and repainting is a fairly clunky process. Now for the current situation, all I really need are these two images, so I'm just going to drag these over here and delete all the rest. Okay. Another thing I did, by the way, is I added a hotkey, which you can do by File, Configure Shortcuts. And I configured a shortcut for this, level settings, because I find this comes up a lot. So I made it a very kind of an obscure key combination, Control Shift Alt L, because it's not something I'm going to be clicking all the time, but and I don't want it to have a collision with any other hotkeys, but it's definitely useful every once in a while to be able to go in and just see what the parameters are of a given level, what the actual path is on disk, what is the name of that level that opentoonz is maintaining under the hood. And I do believe, as an experiment, we could try one thing here, which I think will be interesting. Let's save this level as. My suspicion is it's going to not only save the level, but it's going to save all the other images associated with the level. In other words, it's not going to do what you would expect a cloning operation to do, where it detaches these two files from the underlying TLV file that the images were dragged from. So let's just give that a crack. So we'll go level, save level as. Okay, and in this case, let's just see here. I need to jump up to Blender, and we can see that this is shot 102. Okay, when I originally did this in Blender, I actually just took, well, it looks like they're both MP4 files. So what it looks like I did was I had an animation and it wasn't long enough, and I essentially repeated it. Okay. So the problem I have is, why not go ahead and work out the timing correctly in a single MP4 file, which isn't the most important thing in the world, but the more important thing is the ink and paint on the Ninja looks pretty good, but her outlines are too dark. Not really happy with her outlines, especially because it's a static shot where she never moves, so you're going to notice that those ink lines are extremely dark. Yada yada yada. So let's go back here. And let's just see what happens, and we'll, just to keep things simple, we'll save it in the folder I just created, which is going to be TLV saved levels. Okay, and this is going to be, what did we say that was, shot 101? I'm looking on the other screen. No, it's 102. Okay, I just want to make sure I get my file names right. So 0102. So we'll just save that as a TLV file. And interestingly, okay, so we want to take a couple steps here. What opentoonz does when you do a save level as is, what appears to be happening is it immediately reloads it. So that's why it's asking me if you want to import or load it. Okay. So now the question becomes, what happened on the disk? Well, on the disk we do see 102.tpl and 102.tlv. 102.tlv is the same size as Battle Ink and Paint, so that tells me that indeed it did not separate the stuff out. It didn't, clone it, and that's fine. I didn't expect that it would, so I'm just going to stop right there, and on my other screen I'm going to delete those two files because they're not really useful. What I will do is grab these two cells, and let's just clone them, and then delete the original, and now we can see, hold on, let me just make sure. Okay, presumably this is the clone, but here I better double check. So let's go back here, and yes, this is the clone, this is the original. So I'm going to delete this, and then what I'm going to now do, instead of doing a file save as level, what I'm actually going to do is just save the scene. So I'm going to save the scene as, and then this will just go in the root scenes folder 0102, which I assume does not already exist. And just to confirm, if we go back here in our drawings, we should, I might have to hit refresh, view, what's a hotkey in Free Commander? Control R. Yeah, everywhere else it's F5, but okay. And interestingly enough, I do not see 0102. So what did I do wrong? Let's go back here. File, save scene as, and in scenes I saved it as 0102. Oh, I know what's wrong. So 0102, okay, 0102 is there, so that worked. What's going on here then is that this level is being referred to from whatever the location is where opentoonz created the clone. So this is where your save level as function kind of makes sense, because what I really want to do probably is go back here and do a little work for opentoonz, okay? Because in the drawings folder, interesting. Okay. Yeah, so sorry guys, I'm confused. I did file save as, save scene as, and it's in Val's anime scenes. Okay. So, oh, I'm sorry. So I'm looking in the wrong place. I knew I was doing something stupid. So yeah, it's not in the drawings folder. So down in the scenes, we see it. Sort these by name. Okay, there's 0102. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here and actually create the folder for opentoonz 0102. Just to see if you can do it this way. I think you probably can. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to, and again, these are just steps you take to organize your work so you kind of sort of know what's going on. So I'm going to save this level as, and I'm going to save it in the place where opentoonz would have saved it anyway. So go into drawings, 0102, and let's just call this pointy, since he's pointing at Akari. And you can see that it did exactly what we wanted, which if we go back here, there it is. And now what I suspect we will find is if I hit the B key, and then let's just call this shadows, okay? All right, because we're going to want to put some shadows on here. So now we will go File, Save All. And what should have happened is this shadows layer or level should have been saved in the same folder that is associated with the scene. And indeed, there it is. Now it's called b.tlv. All right, so now a really good question is, could I have spared myself some silliness by saving the level under a more sensible name? So I'm just going to do this again. I'm going to hit the B key, and now I'm going to go level, save level as, and this one we'll call shadows. Okay. Now this is something I haven't done much. And by the way, I'm taking the b.tlv because that's the default name opentoonz gave the level I had created a moment ago. And I'm just deleting them because I don't need them anymore. Okay, so now when I hit save all, if we go ahead and go down here, and let's just assume we're probably going to have at least one more drawing. Okay, if we hit save all, come back here, and the shadows.tlv file did just increase in size. And so now if I delete it out of the opentoonz scene and then go back here, and you can even see here, this is before I added the second drawing, 222 bytes. After I added the second drawing, 710 bytes. So they just grow as you add drawings, obviously. And if I jump back to opentoonz, having just dragged that in, there it is with both drawings. What you do lose, as you can see, is the timing information, which tells me that the timing information, like in other words how long each cell lasts, is something that is determined by the toonz scene file, not the level file. It appears to me that the TLV level, toonz raster level files are a compact list of all the drawings, and if you want to retain timing information, you need to really what you need to do is include, well, really just open the scene. So if you wanted to share your work with a friend, for example, like so now we have some timing information in there, right? And you can see where it switches drawings because I got that black dot, right? Okay, so now if I hit save all, okay, and then delete these two levels. All right. So now the question becomes, let's be very rigorous here and find out, if we drag these two into opentoonz, did the timing information come in or not? And what we see is, indeed, it did not. Therefore, if you want to share a scene with timing information, which let's just recreate that real quick, what you want to do, and I'm kind of guessing here, but I'm pretty sure I'm right about this, is it would be the wisest course of action to save the scene as, okay? And in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save it here in the temp folder, just so it's not cluttering up my normal file management. Okay. So now, if I go new scene, here's the part that's kind of helpful. Now, if I come over here, go down to the temp folder. Okay. And there's obviously a bunch of other garbage in there, but here's 102.toonz. Now, what you can do is drag that TNZ file, which is an opentoonz scene, into a new file, and what it'll do is load it as a sub-X sheet. Okay? And now if I go down into the sub-X sheet, interestingly, okay, so this is, I'm glad this happened. We see that the TLV images, or the TLV levels, the toonz raster levels, seem to be being referenced, but opentoonz can't find them. So that says to me that relative to the location of the TNZ file, the scene, opentoonz can't find the levels it's looking for. My question now is, can I fix that by simply changing what is being referred to? And the way I would do that is go to my level settings. And here what we're going to do is we're going to replace these. So this is, yeah, see, it's looking in OT nightly stuff. It's literally just looking in the wrong place. So if I click this, presumably what's going to happen is a file dialog is going to open, but opentoonz seems to be thinking and maybe getting confused. No worries, it just took a minute. So now, this is where being organized is helpful, because now I can go to Val's Anime and TLV saved levels, and I want it to point to this right here. And it says, the path you entered, and by the way, it looks to me like it got the spelling of the name wrong too, which is weird. Yeah, let's try it. And it worked. Okay, so now let's try the same thing again here. And where we're supposed to be is here. Ink and paint. Well, actually, no. I'm sorry. I grabbed the wrong level. I literally just grabbed the wrong level. So let's fix that. Fine, let's fix that. I'm thinking and talking, and I forgot that I'm literally in the wrong place. I need to go to Drawings, 0102, and this is what I wanted. Actually, we wanted this. Okay, and here, what we wanted was 0102 shadows. Okay, so there they are. And we also can go back up here and explode the sub-X sheet, and thus my levels come back in. So it is confusing, and it does require a little bit of housekeeping, which is kind of unfortunate, but we're talking about workflow matters, which the driver is not losing your work. The driver is being able to recover stuff if you need to. So hopefully this won't come up every day, and the general policy should be to simply do good quality file management in the first place. But here we are. So now if I actually save the scene as 0102, it should warn me that I'm overwriting it, and boom, there we go. I do want to overwrite it, and now we're back home. Our imagery is decoupled from the original long, really long TLV file, and we can go ahead and repurpose this scene correctly. Step one would be to get the background in, because in this case, if we look here, clearly the background and the shadows are pretty important. However, this background, I don't want to say it sucks, but basically I'm not real happy with it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to jump back to opentoonz, and what I'm going to do is just hit insert, and I'm going to insert a raster level. Okay, and we're going to give it, let's try to give this a sensible name, 0102 background. Okay, and it's going to be saved in extras, because regular raster levels always get saved in the extras folder. Now obviously I could change my mind and have a different kind of level. If I change this to a toonz raster level, then it would save it in the drawings subfolder. But I want it to be a raster level because frankly I just want to paint. So there it is, and it created it. Okay. So now what we can do is get busy. Alright, we determined yesterday that the toonz, or the standard raster levels, do in fact have the ability to do fill operations. So the first thing I'm going to do is fill it. I'm going to fill it with black, so that I can then just basically get a little bit of color in here. And I'm going to take my oil paint brush, and I want this to be really just as simple as possible. Okay, how did that get green? I wanted blue. Alright. Okay, and I'm going to make my brush bigger. So you can see if you're wondering, well, why would I do my background paintings in opentoonz instead of Krita? And this is one of the places where I would say you're correct. It would probably be better to use Krita, just because if you're using really big brushes, you're going to introduce some lag. You know, opentoonz does start choking more quickly than Krita does. But anyway, and I'm going to go ahead and turn these guys off so I can just kind of get the feel here. Whoops. So what I want to do is, I'm just going to use my airbrush actually. I want this to be a very simple background. And one of the characteristics of this background is that the light is coming from basically the upper left. So what I'm going to do is go blue, and obviously you can see that the airbrush is a little more performant. Okay, like so. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a little bit more and do something like this, just to create some beams, if you will. Let's make this a little smaller and just a little bit lighter. That's too much. Fortunately, it does respond to pressure sensitivity. Okay, that's it, man. That's my background. So file, just save all, then opentoonz saves everything. And the only thing I would object to, I would say, is that right here it feels like the black isn't coming over quite far enough. So really I want it to be kind of more like this. And I'm actually also thinking that that looks pretty good. And then let's try, now that I see it in context, let's just try something like this. So we get a little bit of those beams going on, but not too much. Now, obviously, we've got an error right here. Zuko's over there flapping his wings like it's going out of style. I'm not quite sure what's up with that. What are you doing? Oh, he's trying to give himself a bath in his water dish. Well, that's okay. Parrots do that sometimes. That's all right. Okay, so now, again, remember, save early, save often. Okay, so now we've got the shot, and if we go back and look at the timing, I'm just going to literally count it. Yeah, that's what I expected. And normally with anime, you're on threes. So what we want to do here is 1, 2, 3, and let's delete all this so that we can go. Okay, so he's going to point 3 times. Wait a bit, half a second, and then 0.2 more times. Well, obviously, well, yeah, that would be correct. So let's just run that. Okay, I don't like it. I think there's too many points here, so bump, bump. Yeah. So 1, 2. Huh, that's kind of strange. Let me look at that again. Oh, I see what's going on. Okay. Let me stretch this out because the loop around was kind of throwing me on what I was seeing timing-wise because it was looping from the end right back to the beginning. So I actually might be okay. Dot, 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 dot. Yeah, that's actually what I wanted. Perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Now, the thing I complained about earlier as I'm looking at the other screen is that Akari's ink was really, really dark. But when I look at this, the original TLV file, that was not there. That was not a problem. So I actually think I'm okay. And it appears to me that the shadow situation is much simpler than what I've created here. This was not really the smartest thing ever because frankly I think one single drawing is going to do the trick for the shadows. Okay, how is that possible? Well, like this. I'm just going to draw like this. And also like this. So what's going on here? Fill. It's set to freehand. Fill. Fill. Okay, perfect. So this drawing can be deleted and just slide this up. Okay, good. And now we can just turn down the alpha. And I would say we also need some shadows behind her. So we have to be a little more careful here. Because we do have, actually let's just put this other ninja in shadow. That works. That works fine. Okay, so the only caveat being that I would like to experiment with a slightly darker shadow as well. Right here. Okay, and I'm going to use, there's a brush that I seem to use for shadows a lot that I like. Now because this is a Toonz raster level, I am in fact effectively replacing this shadow with this one. And of course we can go back and make that less extreme if we want to. But I actually like it slightly darker. It's a fine tightrope we walk in this regard. Okay. Now, one thing that seems like it's missing to me is Akari's mouth. So we're going to have to do this a little bit carefully. Let's use the ink pencil. I trust that the... Okay. This needs to be set at 0, which would be whatever the default. Yeah, whatever the default sizing is 0. So you're with your my paintbrushes, whatever is the size that's built into the brush settings is 0. And then you're either going larger or smaller from there. Generally, you'll find that it's best to work with brushes that are designed to work at their native level. I won't get into all the whys and wherefores, but I've just found that to be true. Now, one thing I want to keep in mind here is that I am going to be adding highlights, but the shadow layer is going to be masked to the drawing below it, so that all this shadowing that goes outside the lines doesn't show up in the final render. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is go to the effects, and by the way, let's ungroup this. Okay. And what we want to do is take the shadows. So Darren T asked me why I don't use the matte in effect, and it's because I've just never used it. But let's try it. Let's go matte in. I don't know if this is what I want, but let's see. Okay, we need to turn that off, obviously. Okay, we might have gotten this backwards. So if we go like that. Okay, so the matte in effect doesn't quite do what we wanted, so that's okay. We're here to learn. I'm going to replace this with matte out. Maybe that's what I really want. I just literally have no idea. Yes, that's what we wanted. Okay, so that's fine. That worked, I guess. Let me look here. Yeah, kind of, sort of, but not really. What happens if we flip them around? Let's just see. Yeah, definitely not. Okay, so I'm not quite sure what how that's working from a blending mode standpoint. So I think for the moment I'm going to abandon this approach. So sorry, Darren. I'll relook at this later, but for now I'd rather just be able to get my work done. So I'm going to hit multiply INO, and clipping mask is turned on, and we'll switch the foreground and background around. And now that is actually what we were after. Okay, so now you can see that we can't see the shadows anywhere except where they are over the characters. Now, let's turn the background back on. And I'm going to say that I was a little sloppy here. Fortunately, there's only 2 drawings, so I'm going to hit the eraser and just fix this. Okay, stop. I need my hardness to be quite high so that I can get right up to the edge there. Okay, next. So your comma and your period keys are what let you toggle between drawings, by the way. Okay, so one thing I was kind of getting to is that the matting effect that allows you to clamp out these shadows, because it's in multiply mode, if I add highlights to this shadow layer, so I do both highlights and shadows, the highlights won't show up. Okay, so, and the reason for that is, think of it this way. Anything times 1 is 1. So if I draw some white on here, then I have white lines that are being multiplied by the color underneath, which gives you what? The color underneath. Now with the shadows, which are dark, you're multiplying, well, let's take it to the extreme and pretend the shadows were actually black. Well, 0 times purple is 0, so you're going to get black. So you can, with the multiply effect, you can only deal with shadows and not highlights. Well, that's okay, because what I really want to do in this case is just go ahead and add some highlights baked directly into Akari. So I'm going to go Control-C, Control-V to create a new color, and I'm going to make it white so that it's obnoxious and really easy to see, like so. That I don't like. Little touch here would be good. Okay, so now, because Akari's drawing is repeated, I can just go like this. Just select all this stuff that I want to have repeat into the next frame and just hit Control-V. Okay, so now I need to come back here and do the same thing with her mouth. Control-C, Control-V. And basically, I think the shot is done. Alright, so let's have a look. One other thing I would like to do, however, is take this darker shadow and give this guy a little bit more shadowing, like so. Okay, so there's our shot. Now also there is one more thing, which is this guy. Not sure what I was thinking here, but the reality is he's supposed to have eyes. He doesn't have like ghost eyes going on. So let's just do that. Let's keep it a little bit loose. I like that. And then let's grab this, Control-C, plug that into the next frame. And as I said, I think we're done. Actually, we're not done. There's one more thing. I think this might explain where those erroneous lines were coming from. Mr. Ninja guy. Okay, let's do something here. The ninja's costume is not supposed to be gray. Not so much. It's really supposed to be almost black. So yeah, let's put it at 5 or 6. And then let's come back up here and let's just toy a bit with increasing. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I like Akari's outlines being like that, and I also like adding a little bit of chromaticity, i.e. color, to her outlines. Like this. Just a little bit. So now we have a problem, because obviously our ninja guy, we can't see his outlines. He needs lighter outlines. So that's easy to fix. What we're going to do is, first of all, let's look at this. Okay, so I need to name this correctly. Highlights. Okay, and now I'm going to hit Control CV, and I'm going to call this Ninja Outlines. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to do a fill operation, but we're going to fill using freehand mode so that we can loop around what we want to fill. We are not filling the areas, we're actually filling the lines. So we're trying to change the color of all of his lines, and we're going to change them obviously to white. And then once we make sure everything worked properly, we'll go ahead and darken them back down. Now, importantly, I do not want to I don't think I want to change all the outlines. I just want to change the outlines around the black. Okay, so I do need to be a little bit careful. And I'm going to use the frame range. So with that, let's see if I can pull this off. I'm going to actually do this in several steps. Okay, that's going to be a little risky. Actually, you know what? Okay, it did work, but hold on. Let's just undo that. Let's do this a different way. Let's use the brush. Let's do this the smart way. Let's just paint the outlines that matter. Like so. I think that is going to make a higher quality result. There we go. I like that a lot. And now we can darken them back down to make them a little more manageable. Something like that. Okay, so now if we want to save time, we can do it this way. We can actually just cheat and select everything that we just worked with. Control C, go to the next frame, hit Control V. That's fine. And so now all we have to do is a little correction here. So we'll hit the Alt key to shrink our brush a bit. And then we go back to this and dial in the key outlines that we were concerned with. And I'm really glad I did this because, in my opinion, as I alluded to in a recent video, I feel like I'm raising the quality bar a little bit here. Okay, and by the way, I want to add a little bit of shadow action here for this guy. Let's do it like this. Yeah, let's go ahead and see if this feels good. Yeah, it does. Okay. And I'm going to do a little experiment with this as well. What I'm doing is I'm basically cheating. I'm just darkening his eyes a little bit on the shadow layer. Okay. So the only criticism would be, I feel like his pupils need to be a little bolder. Yes. That feels pretty good. Back here in the shadows, I guess his ear would have a bit of shadow action going on. And so now, because I'm not totally clear on what is in frame 1 and frame 2, I'm going to go ahead and just do a quick copy and paste of all the stuff here that I know is repeating between the two frames. And I think that will do the trick. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Is that it? I think that's the shot. Wow, 40 minutes, not too shabby. Okay, and there is one more thing. Just for fun, let's put it on a separate level entirely. So we don't have to keep cutting and pasting. So what I'm going to do is go like this. Don't want to forget about Mr. Ninja's ponytail. So we'll just put it over top. And when we hit save all, opentoonz will save this new level. It'll just give it a name. And I don't care about trying to remember it or anything. So I see one flaw here with the shadows. Let's just hit the V key. Okay, why is that? Oh, it needs to be coloring the areas, not the lines. Silly. Alright, and now let's go here. Okay, so I'm going to mark this with my brush and just go like, sorry, my bad. I need to be in the shadow layer. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to color some shadow in right here. That way, what I just did will not show up in the render. But now it'll make it so that when we go to the next frame, the finger will still be in shadow. Cool. So that's that. Now what we do is we hit Control R, which renders it quite rapidly. And we're going to save this as 102.mp4 in our render folder. So project root, Val's anime, render 0102.mp4. And it complains that the file's already there, which means we need to go back to Blender, save our work, and create a new file so that the video files that are being referenced by my Blender video edit are not open, because that's why it's gonna puke on trying to save the MP4 file, because the files were already open in Blender and you can't overwrite an open file. So what does this guy's voice sound like? Let's toy with that. That's something I'm going to start toying with a little more, is the characterization of the voices and all that sort of stuff. You handle the sword well, but not well enough. Yeah, maybe. Or, you handle the sword well, but not well enough. Yeah, maybe. You handle the sword well, but not well enough. Okay, so we'll play around with that. Anyway, this can be deleted. And this, I guess we probably should re-drag this in. So I'm going to go here to my render folder, go to 0102.mp4, drag that puppy into Blender, where it's going to stick it right there. And then I need to actually line these up better so we get the context of the action that took place before. Let's go back to this shot that was so time consuming the other day. And here he comes. Uh-oh. That shot I did yesterday. Okay, cool. So now what we need to do is we need to do some color correction. So in Blender, here's the strip, the basic settings of this video clip. Here's the modifiers, and I'm going to add a curves modifier. And for most of the shots in this scene, dropping the high point about 25% to 30 seems to be doing the trick. Okay, so now we're in a good place. This shot has a bit of a cheeseball characteristic to it, but you know what? I like it, and this one as well. So okay, so now here 106 is where it all falls apart. Great. Okay, so now we're going to go hit the B key, grab all these guys. Oops, didn't mean to do that, so I'm going to hit the A key twice. Nope, That's Blender 2.79. Blender 2.8, you hit Alt-A. Ta-da! B key, boom. G key to go is how you drag these files around, like so. You lowly jackal. Okay, so now I'm not totally sure I really need color correction on this, but as you can see, this shot was really just two still images that I just threw in sequence. So what I'm going to do is hit the B key to draw a box, B for box, around them, and then we're going to go make a meta strip, which is Control G. I'm going to get used to the hotkey by doing it that way. Boom. Okay, so now, because it's a meta, all those other clips are inside of this one. At any time, you can toggle meta, which lets you go in and individually look at the meta strip, which is pretty powerful if you think about it. This is kind of analogous to what you have in HitFilm. In HitFilm Express, you have a video editing timeline, but that timeline can consist of what it calls composites. This is kind of the same thing. In your meta strip, by just hitting tab, this could have multiple, layers of stuff in it, whatever you want. And so it is definitely convenient to be able to do that. All right, but the other thing is now I can take the meta strip and add a curves modifier that applies to everything in that strip, which is kind of useful as well. So I don't quite like that. It's a little too dull. I'm going to go with that. Okay, this shot can remain uncolor corrected because it's one of those anime effects. And at this point, I say well, actually, let's stay here. Let's move on to shot 106. This one is so problematic that it's indescribable. And so I think the way I want to handle it, actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the video because we'll put that shot on the next video. Okay, so we'll limit ourselves to one shot per video. But yeah, and so I expect, I'm looking at the time here, but I expect I'll go ahead and move forward with the next shot. So anyway, as you guys know, there will be more later, and thanks for watching.